Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about the origins of Dungeons and Dragons, Gary Gygax, and TSR. We're going to talk about the importance of TSR, and where is TSR in the legacy of Dungeons and Dragons now? All right, so there was this really interesting event that happened last week. So basically, Cynthia Williams is the new CEO of Wizards of the Coast. She's replacing Chris Cox, who was promoted to CEO of Hasbro. So all things point to Hasbro, the market, everybody loves Dungeons & Dragons. And Dungeons & Dragons just reported they're the first tabletop role-playing game. They're the first company to create tabletop role-playing games ever who have made $1 billion. Right? That's incredible, right? So, Win is just shining off of Wizards of the Coast, right? And so, but they brought in this new CEO, Cynthia Williams, and she said, "I'm super proud to be joining Wizards of the Coast, the company that created Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons," right? And it was like record scratch. Wait a second. Yes, Wizards of the Coast created Magic the Gathering, but no, they did not create Dungeons and Dragons. Wizards of the Coast didn't create Dungeons and Dragons. TSR created Dungeons and Dragons. Specifically, Gary Gygax went and got the Blooms Brothers, got the whole thing funded, watched while David Arneson risked $0, put nothing in with the Bloom Brothers, nothing in with Gary Gygax, did nothing, talked more. That's all Arneson ever did. And did nothing to make D&D a reality, just attached himself like a carbuncle to Gary Gygax and then asked for more later, even though he had risked nothing, right, and not really done any hard work, right? Just flapped his gums on the television, on a telephone a little bit, right? So basically, the Blooms Brothers and Gygax stood up TSR and they published Dungeons and Dragons under TSR. So Wizards of the Coast did not create Dungeons and Dragons, right? So why did this happen? Why did Cynthia Williams say that Wizards of the Coast created Dungeons and Dragons? Well, I'll give you my reason, and I'm going to talk about somebody else's reason because I think it's important. All right, so here's the reason why I think she said that. It's completely understandable. I think Cynthia Williams is not a gigantic Dungeons and Dragons fan and is coming from the Muggleverse, right? Like, Muggles really don't know nothing about Dungeons and Dragons. They know it exists. They know it's in Stranger Things. They know about the Satanic Panic, but they don't know how the game runs. They still have this, very, I think a lot of them still have this very antiquated idea that it's played by, nerds who live in their mom's basement. That could not be farther than the truth now. Basically, world-crushing executives, they play Dungeons and Dragons, doctors play Dungeons and Dragons, professors play Dungeons and Dragons, elementary school kids play Dungeons and Dragons. It's ridiculous. It ain't the 80s anymore, right? Everybody needs to wake up, right? So, basically, and I think, but she's in this world that's I'm aware of Dungeons and Dragons, but I don't really know much about it, right? So if you don't really know much about Dungeons and Dragons, it's very reasonable to assume that Wizards of the Coast created Dungeons and Dragons. And the reason why is they have owned it since 1999, right? Wizards of the Coast only under Hasbro. Wizards of the Coast, its own freestanding company, which was which was purchased by Hasbro, right? Wizards of the Coast only owned Dungeons and Dragons between 1997 and 1999, right? So, and then Wizards of the Coast was bought, lock, stock, and barrel. Everything owned by Wizards of the Coast was then owned by Hasbro in 1999. That is 23 years. So, and get this, a while ago, Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast have been the owners of Dungeons and Dragons longer than TSR ever owned it, right? So they are the majority share historical owner, right? They have more time as Dungeons and Dragons owner than TSR did. TSR is a blip now, right? And so if you don't know Dungeons, only people who are very knowledgeable about Dungeons and Dragons history know about TSR. And I think her mistake tells us a few things. Here, what does it tell us? Here you go. One, it tells us about specifically TSR is forgotten at this point. Gary Gygax is not forgotten, right? And so really Gary is remembered as the creator of the game, and people are like, I don't know what company he put it out under. Who cares? It's not around anymore. It literally doesn't exist. Oh wait, TSR does exist. Let's talk about that, right? So TSR was a horribly run company that existed from 1974 to 1997. It did terrible until, so from 1974 to 1986, it was pure nonsense, right? 1986, Lorraine Williams steps in and fixes every business mistake Gary made. And the reason she did that was because Gary chose her to do it. Right? Like, Gary handpicked her to fix all his financial mistakes, right? He's like, I'm a brilliant game designer. I'm a brilliant creator. I'm a horrible businessman, right? I picked it, like, and it's undebatable. Gary Gygax was absolutely terrible at business, right? So, but he was brilliant in a lot of other ways, right? So, and it all worked out because he was smart enough to choose the right woman to fix everything he did wrong, right? Like Lorraine Williams was, and in that way, he was smart at the end, right? He was smart when he needed to be on business, right? So basically, TSR was this terribly run company from 1974 to 1986. 1986, 1997, Lorraine Williams fixes every single financial problem that he did and made Dungeons & Dragons incredibly attractive to a new buyer, right? And then it was swept up by a new buyer, Wizards of the Coast, and then Wizards of the Coast was swept up by Hasbro, right? Since then, TSR has continued to exist, right? But the new TSRs that aren't even like the official TSRs were even worsely run than the original, right? The 1974 to 1986, right? The TSRs have hey, here's a product we have, and we're a real company. And so they like build a hut, which is their product. It catches on fire and burns to ground in ashes, and everybody laughs. And it's happened 2 or 3 times, right? So the reality is TSR has been swept into the dustbin of history. I don't think it needs to be remembered. What really needs to be remembered is Gary Gygax. He's the important creator in Dungeons & Dragons. And it's important that we understand that we remember Gary Gygax and that we remember Lorraine Williams. I don't think it's important to anybody that anybody remembers the historical TSR and definitely should forget modern TSR because it has been absolutely a burning dumpster fire. Everybody who put TSR onto their product after 2003, it has turned out to be a burning dumpster fire, and it is a bad. All right, so then let's talk about. So I heard this other D&D commentator, and he said, he says one of the things that could have happened was the reason Cynthia Williams said this was that she got her marching orders from Wizards of the Coast, and they said go out and say that Wizards of the Coast invented D&D, right? And like proposed that Cynthia Williams was given a handwritten script from Wizards of the Coast to read. Like, first of all, she is CEO, right? Like she ain't taking no copy, right? She gonna say what she thinks, right? And so why would a male commentator say, hey, I think Cynthia Williams was handed a script from Wizards of the Coast that told her to tell a lie that about 30 seconds of Wikipedia checking would undo. Like it's just, well, I'll tell you why. Lorraine Williams is historically massively denied her credit in Dungeons & Dragons, and people love to say, a lot of males love to say, Dungeons & Dragons succeeded despite Lorraine Williams. Davy Chappie is one of them. He's got an entire video on it, which was so frustrating, right? And so the reality is we're just back again, right? Like, Wizards of the Coast Dungeons & Dragons being in the hands of a female leader really upsets a lot of people, right? And so they bring out these weird conspiracy theories that she's gonna, like, that she was handed copy by Wizards of the Coast, and just like, because she's a female CEO, so she can't, like, make up her own mind or make her own statements or, say something useful, right? Like, I have to assume that she was handed copy, which would have easily been broken and understood with 30 seconds of Wikipedia. Like, I'm like, oh man, this is bad. Like, but the thing is, I think it's important for us to recognize Cynthia was good. Like, she's already in, it's already starting, right? I'm super happy. Like, I have daughters, right? I want the world to be equally ownable by men and women, right? And women are absolutely 100% worthy and capable and willing to run global enterprises. And I think it's a good thing that Dungeons & Dragons now has a female CEO. One, it sets a precedence in history. No prominent tabletop fantasy role-playing game has ever been owned by two separate companies that both had female CBOs. Like Dungeons & Dragons moves forward and creates a new progressive memorial, right? Like, this is an achievement. It's a badge they own that no other tabletop fantasy role-playing game in the world has, right? And this is on top of them crushing every other tabletop fantasy role-playing game in sales and saying, hey, women can deliver, right? Like, Lorraine Williams delivered, right? And Cynthia Williams, I think, is going to deliver. So if you hear, like, male commentators spouting out like weird ideas on why Cynthia Williams didn't understand, that Dungeons & Dragons was not created by Wizards of the Coast, be careful. Like, that might be coming from a different source than you expected. Like, essentially, their prejudice. That's my opinion. What's your opinion? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.